Sign up to Council's disaster.
I call for apologies. There's no apologies. However, we do have Councillor Branthwaite zooming in online, so thank you, Councillor Branthwaite. Councillors, I'll move to the next item on the agenda, which is messages of condolence. Do we have any messages of condolence? No messages of condolence. We'll move to the next item on the agenda, which is prior notifications of conflicts of interest. Do we have any prior notifications of conflicts of interest? Thank you, councillors. I have a conflict of interest I'd like to register. I, Matthew Burnett, have a prescribed conflict of interest in agenda item G 4.4, tender RPQS 76-22 training services, as the report considers entering a contract with Peak Services Proprietary Limited, a related entity to the Local Government Association of Queensland, of which I'm a director. I will leave the meeting for the consideration of agenda 4.4 and hand over to the Deputy Mayor. Any further conflicts, councillors? Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the Mayor's statement on current issues. And speaking of LGAQ, I was recently in Canberra for the ELGA board meeting, which is the Australian Local Government Association, of course representing all 537 councils in the country on issues that are obviously important to us, most importantly financial assistance grants and ensuring local councils and local communities get their fair share back from the federal government. That was the highest priority agenda item, and of course the local roads and community infrastructure program, which of course we did actually receive funding for that again. That was extended in the federal budget, which is good news for local government, and unfortunately financial assistance grants weren't increased, but we'll continue to fight for that 1% of Commonwealth taxation to come back to local councils in Australia. We held the Mayor's Youth Breakfast last Friday at the Gladstone Entertainment Convention Centre. Well done to the whole team who organised that, put that together. We had about 90 young people registered and nominated for that, and about 70 at the event on the day. So it's fantastic to acknowledge our youth, the next generation of the Gladstone region. From right across the region they travelled and into the city to be part of that event. We have some amazing young people in our community, whether it was sporting, whether it was in their volunteering, whether it was in their employment, whether it was cultural, musical. There were so many inspirational young people, and it was fantastic to acknowledge them as well. The Tenham Crab Classic was held just recently as well, and shout out to the team there as well. They've done an amazing job keeping that event going, and of course raising funds for very important causes right across Australia. They do an amazing job. This weekend we have the Boyne Valley Country Music Campout. So if you haven't got your tickets, get in and get them. If they haven't already sold out, I'll be heading up Friday. I know Councillor O'Grady and I think Councillor Churchill's heading there as well. So councillors and everyone watching on live stream, if you haven't got your tickets yet, get in involved and check out the Boyne Valley Country Music Campout in Yabobo this weekend. And of course, one thing to end on, it's Easter in Gladstone. Starting on Thursday the 14th, we have our Gladstone Hubba Festival opening night on the GPC Marina stage. It's all for the families. We've got Peter Rabbit 2, the Smurfs, Dinosaur Train, and of course wrapping up with fireworks. And it is the greatest time in the world to be in Gladstone at Easter time, because on Friday we have Seven Whales of Moscow and Indigo Electrics playing on live on stage as well. On the Saturday we have Red Thorn, and people might remember the Koi Boys from the Mayor's Ball a few years back. They'll be here on Saturday night, and of course fireworks again. There's more entertainment on the Sunday on the Marina stage, and including the Elton John experience. So, and of course wrapping up with more fireworks. That's our Gladstone Hubba Festival. It's celebrating a significant milestone this year, and it's good to see the festival still going strong, and of course free for all to enter, to go in and enjoy. And then this year we have our Brisbane to Gladstone Village back as well. Again, opening on Thursday night with the village opening. We've got the Yachtsman's Long Lunch. Now you do have to buy a ticket to go to that, and it's probably almost sold out. So check out the B2G online page and see if there's still tickets. Later that night we have our Festival of Summer Sounds for the younger generation. It's just a jam-packed Easter weekend. And of course on the Saturday we've got the new event, the Harbour Cruise, the Seafood Festival, which is free entry at the B2G Village on the Saturday, and then the Line Crossing Party on the Sunday, where we will hand out the trophies and the presentation ceremony to our yachtsmen and women in the Brisbane to Gladstone yacht race. And of course the live stream, sponsored by Gladstone Regional Council, will kick off on Good Friday morning, and you can watch it on your iPad, on your laptop, and you can watch it at the Harbour Festival food court, at the big screen at the East Shores, or also in the B2G Village. So make sure you get involved. I'll be there in Shorncliffe on Good Friday to help start the race, and then back here in Gladstone Easter Saturday morning to welcome the yachties in with that traditional carton of beer and medallion, and welcome into our city for our Line Crossing Party on the Sunday. That is Gladstone, Easter in Gladstone, and if you're going to be anywhere else this Easter, you're kidding yourself. Councillors and officers, the next item on the agenda before we go to our deputation is the confirmation of the minutes, and I'll move to the confirmation of the minutes of the 15th of March 2022. Mover, please. Thank you, Councillor Churchill. Seconder, Councillor Trevor. Any corrections, comments? No. I'll put the motion. All in favour? The motion is carried. And then we also have the confirmation of the special meeting minutes on the 24th of March. Move Councillor Hanson, seconder Councillor O'Grady. All in favour? Thank you. That's carried. You're an apology.
Just a procedural matter. I excluded myself from that meeting, so if I don't put my hand up, I'm presumed to have voted in favour, aren't I? I can't remember now. Negative?
No, it's all right. It's just adopting the minutes, so.
But I shouldn't vote at all, should I?
Yeah, you just can't move the motion if you weren't there, and that's fine.
I can still vote. No, I can't.
You can vote to confirm the minutes, yes.
Okay. All right, well, I should have put my hand up there.
That's fine. We had a majority anyway. Thank you, Councillor Trevor. Okay, thank you, councillors. We do now have a deputation from the Gladstone Bowls Club Incorporated regarding the Slat Chap Museum, and I'll hand over to Mr. Graham McVean and Carly Homan. I think if Carly is joining, or maybe not, or just over to Mr. Graham McVean. Over to you, Graham. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and councillors and officers and members of the public that are here. Thank you for this opportunity. This is a sort of a follow-up, if you like, to the presentation we did at the Cultural Centre some months ago. And what I'd like to do is just start with a refresh, if you like, of those 39 pages that we went through. I'll make it as quick as I can, and then we'll just go straight to the business case and answer any questions that you guys may have. At the start, I'd like to say that this has been a collaboration of work put in by Carly and her organisation, by TZG, the architects in Sydney, and myself. So I'd just like quickly to move on. That first slide that you're looking at there is just a site plan of what we're dealing with. Now, how do I get this to move up? Oh, there it is. So what we looked at, or they looked at this stage, was the tourism circuit as they found it, and we found that people either go to the Gold Coast from Brisbane, they'll skip up the back way to go to the Stockman's Hall of Fame, some stay on that road and go up to Cairns, some drift up the coast road, but most of them bypass Gladstone. The only reason to come in here is if you're having a wedding or a funeral or something like that. So that's just another one of the site plan. Oh, I'm going the wrong way. Right, I love. Okay, so in looking at the overall thing, what we had to do, because the Slouch Hat building is a lot of glass, right, a lot of reflective glass, so they tracked the sun. So what this slide shows is the movement of the sun through summer, and the movement of the sun during winter, which then allowed us to be able to position the building on an axis, if you like, that sort of comes straight down Dennis Street, which allows it to pick up natural light, but not too much of it. This is the ground floor layout of the museum, and it contains all the usual things like storage areas, a cafe, entranceway, storage space, a shop, and other utilities that will service it. This particular slide shows the upstairs mezzanine floor as it sort of comes into play, and what we plan to do there is have a small aircraft hanging from the ceiling. This slide shows the existing bowls club in proportion to where Anzac Park is, and along this side of it here you'll see that there is what we call a memorial walk that will lead people from the bowls club or from the car park, which has come up later, into the museum. Stage one of this proposal requires the bowls club to be upgraded to be able to handle the extra business that will come, and we're proposing to put a second story on top of the existing bowls club. There is a second story going on there now, but that primarily is for post-traumatic stress counselling for the RSL. We provide space to them free of charge so that they can carry out their necessary work for the returned soldiers. And you would be surprised, probably not surprised, the number of veterans each year in central Queensland that suicide. So this work that we're engaged in and hoping to expand will provide post-traumatic stress counselling, not only for veterans but also for first responders. To cater for all of this, there has to be car parking, and there's proposed a three-storey car parking over where we existing have. This slide shows what the building will look like looking through the trees, and you're sort of looking back at it from the cenotaph where it is now. I just say while you're looking at these slides that we took the trees out so you get a clear look of what the building will look like. This shows the brim of the hat, because the slouch hat has a brim. In this slide, the brim is up. It will operate hydraulically and will be used for ceremonial occasions and perhaps when tourists are there to try to impress them. This one is sort of also looking back from the cenotaph, and it shows that tree in the front is actually the gum tree. We've talked about the gum tree before. It's a widow maker, and it is the only tree on the park that will be affected by this. Every other tree remains and will be illuminated to provide part of the ambience. That's another look at it from looking back from the cenotaph at the ground level, looking into the building. We looked at three ways of presenting it. We looked at stone, which is what you're looking at now. We looked at gabion, which we rejected very quickly. Everybody knows what that is. You build bridges out of it. And the other one was stuccoed. So we kept coming back to the stone. The stone can be milled here locally up at Stanwell. And it's in keeping with the look that the Australian War Memorial has in Canberra, right? Now this is a look, this is Ferris Street. As you come along that little street that runs there, it's just looking back at the building. This is a top view. If you were sort of standing over on Dennis Street, it's starting to show the image of the slouch hat there and the development of the park and the retention of those trees. That's it again, as it would look if you're pulling up in your bus. That's what it won't look like, and that's what it won't look like there. So we're here at the entrance at Ferris Street, where most people will alight from their buses or cars to get entry into the foyer area. So we're in the foyer now at the ground level, and that's where people will muster. There'll be a combination of shops, gift shops, and a small cafe tucked away in the corner there. And this one shows the ground floor with the display boxes, which will house the museum items. That's also inside the building and the steps that will lead up to the mezzanine floor. So we're up on the mezzanine floor now. This glassed area here is also for display, but people on the other side will be able to look straight down into the lower level as they are there. This is the area that over there, that black space is a lift that will get stuff up and down and for mobility. Coming into play here is that memorial walkway that I talked about, and you can see the Bowls Club there is projected to go to a second level. This particular slide shows it looking back from the western side of the cenotaph, and what you're seeing there is a large sandstone wall which will be carved with images of various conflicts and the involvement of our Indigenous community in protecting Australia during war. We've met with Richard and his people, and they are extremely pleased with what we're proposing to do. this is the final slide. It's the car park, right? And we've changed that a little bit. What that shows is that wall covered in vegetation. I said the architect, so I'm not going down there to water that every bloody day. So that's been changed. So the thing goes around this. This is the driveway where you get up to the various levels. That goes to the Glen Lyon Street side, and we're currently thinking and working with the architects on a bit like they've got on the Oaks Hotel, that aluminium embossed stuff, telling the story of Gladstone. So basically that's the refresher. I've left copies of that in printed form, and as I understand it, councillors have a copy, or have had for some time, of the business case. And I think, given that your time is limited, I'm just quite happy to go straight to questions if you have them.
Thanks, Graham. Councillors, questions? Thank you, Councillor Trevor.
Graham, as you know, I've always been a big supporter of this project for historical reasons and family reasons, among many other reasons. I wondered when I was reading the case on Friday, I wondered whether we could enter into some similar co-partnership agreement with the new hydrogen industry to build this. Gladstone will be, or the Gladstone region, I should say, will be eternally grateful for the LNG's contribution to East Shores.
Yes.
East Shores doesn't make a lot of money, but what it does do is provide an enormous community benefit. And I'm trying, my memory's fading with age, but I'm thinking, you know, in the order of 26, 27 million contribution from LNG in order to facilitate that magnificent development down there, which, as I say, doesn't raise a zac for the community, but provides so much comfort and enjoyment for families in this community. And I'm wondering whether there's an opportunity to seize the day early with the hydrogen proponents and say, we've seen, or the community has seen, what LNG can do for this community if they want to establish business here. Here's a proposal that we want to put to you that has historical significance for the whole nation, but has important economic benefits for our region. And we link that into the cruise ship liners. I don't want to preempt anything that might go on the grain silos in the future, but I've always thought of the prospect of putting return soldiers on those grain silos as a link up from the ships to the grain silos to the CBD and the unification of Gundoon Street with Tank, and this being a signature project for that exact linking of Tank and Gundoon to enlarge and enhance and revitalise the CBD, not just in Gundoon Street but also in Tank. And I think that project that you're proposing is a good foundation for looking from a long-term vision and strategic planning process long after I'm since gone, to have that link from Tank to signature project to Gundoon Street to grain silos to ships, cruise ships, to people exiting from the Bruce Highway, finally to see something that they would appreciate and support, given the history in relation to the matter. Look, I love this project. I really do. The economic benefits of it are, in all honesty, questionable. But should we be looking when I say talk about economic benefits, I talk about will it stack up financially? My question is, or perhaps my answer to that is, let's look beyond that and what this thing can do for our community and our return servicemen and the Gladstone Bowl Clubs and the Gladstone region as a community at large. Let's look beyond does this thing stack up financially? Just as if the LNG industries were looking at a financially viable East Shores, they would never have built it.
That's right.
They would never contributed to it. So it's not just all about money, it's about a lifetime development which will do so many things to not only the CBD and tank and the cruise ships and perhaps, and I don't want to preempt this decision, the grain silos and the diggers and the enormous amount of history this community has in relation to return servicemen and women. I love the project.
Well, thank you for that, and we've discussed this before, and I think just touching on your point of bringing in the hydrogen people, that in my opinion is the only way this project will come to fruition, right? We have been very active over the last 6 months, 9 months, canvassing both major political parties, asking for support either in their wish list or all those sorts of things they have. At this stage, we don't have any commitment, right? We have a lot of, this is a great project, but so far we don't have anything coming to us. We say it's a $26 million project, and that there's a bit of fat in that, as you would understand, because the project we're doing at the moment down there, because of COVID and every other excuse they want to throw at you, building costs have gone up and whatever. Like a $500,000 project down there has become a $650,000 project because of the rise in costs, right? So we looked at a number, and the feedback we got from a senator, one of the current parliamentary senators, was you're frightening us with asking for too much money. You need to stage this project, stage 1, 2 and 3, and you need to come back to government and ask for $1.9 million in stage 1, which is basically the upgrading of the Bowls Club, to get it ready. Then you need to go for $9 million, and then you need to go for the balance at the end. So basically that's how we've gone back to both major political parties and said, well, look, if $26 million is too big a jump for you, how about committing 1.9 and then doing it over a 10-year period, we're saying, over 10 years, 3 stages. But then Twiggy Forrest came, and I have the contact of the person there to talk to, but I think it needs more than just me to talk to this person. It needs to come as eloquently as you just put it, to these people, and maybe direct to him himself, because you know what happens when you get tied up with departments. It goes from there to there to there to there to there, and Twiggy seems to be the sort of guy that if there's a project that he can see merit in that's going to benefit the community in the long term, will commit to it on the day, or very, very shortly. So I think we need to collaboratively figure out how we're going to get to that corporate entity, and at least have a chat with him and just see how it's going to happen. Because funding's going to be a problem, and it makes sense to stage it, $2 million, $9 million, $15 million at the end, over 10 years, but even that's a big ask when you're looking for money. And I might say that the Bowls Club are sacrificing, the members are sacrificing a lot in doing this project. Like we have taken the decision 12 months ago to roll the Gladstone Bowls Club entity into Club Gladstone Proprietary Limited, so it becomes its own entity at the top, and that will involve us in then the Bowls Club themselves just becoming an associated entity of the top community organisation, as the RSL will be, as we will be inviting other sporting clubs in town that don't have their own clubhouse to come along and be an associate member and use that facility. So it doesn't remain as a bowls club and just somewhere where the RSL meets to talk to some veterans. It becomes, as it has evolved over the last 5 years, into a true community entity. Like the lady that does the scent sales down there for the swimming club and for the dogs, for the animal rescue and a couple of other places, tells me that in the last 5 years she's raised $500,000 out of our hall, just in scent sales. $500,000, right? And we charge $150 every time she occupies just to pay for the thing. So it is a true community thing. And what we did plan, and the Mayor was right across this, we planned this as being something that people will have to stay in this town for 2 to 3 days to take it in. This is not a big banana where you get out of your car, take a photo, get in and go to the next one, right? This is a building that will be designed with, yes, it will have artefacts in there. It won't have a big tank sitting out the front, and it won't have a big cannon out the front. It'll have artefacts inside that can be on a rotational basis with the Australian War Memorial in Canberra to keep changing. I have some experience with the Queensland Transport Museum as the chair down there for the last 10 years, and I can tell you that people, if they're going to come back to a museum, you've got to keep changing what's inside the museum, right? So what we've planned to be in there is a hologram interactive theaterette that will house 60 people that can, the technology is there, that we get Chris to sit in a chair and tell his life story, and you take millions of photos of him, you ask him a stack of questions, and then when people come into the theaterette, they push the Chris button, and up he pops in that chair that's vacant, and you ask him, well, what was it like when you got out of Auschwitz, right? Then he tells the story in his own words. So we have already identified 2 Indigenous soldiers from this area that fought in the conflicts, and one bloke that was at Maralinga that lives here at the moment, that can be subjects of that hologram theatre. So it also becomes an education thing. So yeah, look, I think your idea is brilliant. You have been a supporter, and I think trying to get to Twiggy Forest or somebody that's pumping hydrogen out there is what we've got to do. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions?
Thank you, Councillor Trevor. Any further questions, councillors? Councillor Grady.
Thank you. No, great project, Grant. I was just wondering, with your consultation for, I don't know whether your feasibility study whether you had community consultation, but like this, like the soldier settlements coming up at your Bobo at the end of April, and you've got your walk for warriors and that sort of stuff. So have you been involving those community groups along the way?
The young veterans particularly.
Yes, yeah.
And look, if you want advice on anything in life, talk to a bowler or talk to a member of the RSL. You'll get it. Yeah. And we've been consulting with people at that level for 4 years.
Yeah. Just that with soldier settlement coming up too, I think that would be a great opportunity to, whether you have some sort of stall out there to sell the project.
Yes.
As well to the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Churchill.
Yeah, thanks for that, and congratulations, Graham, Carly, to get to this stage. You've come a long way. I just wanted to go to a subset, was that you talked about tourism and you made reference in your business case to the economic development benefits that come from it. But my question predominantly, and Carly would understand where I'm coming from, is that tourism also is not equated into a time span, so they're 24/7, be it. Is there some intention with your project to give some sort of enticer to after hours when you're closed, when the facility is closed? That's my first question. The second question is, as with tourism again, and we all know that predominantly the tourism industry is continual, especially on weekends, public holidays, school holidays. So how do you propose to manage and/or I shouldn't say man the facility, person the facility with volunteers, or are you planning to have a paid coordinator? Just trying to get an understanding or an insight of how it will operate on a continual basis.
Well, we have a business plan, a P&L, for the operation of it, and it is a combination of some volunteers, but certainly permanent paid staff. We found that at the Bowls Club, that whilst volunteers are good and help keep your costs down, they're not always the best people at serving the public, and whilst they try to be as reliable as they can, they're not as good as permanent staff. So what we're planning is our initial numbers in our business case to our board is that in year 2 it will generate around about $5 million in income on about $4 million of outgoings, right? So let's say it breaks even, right? That's what we'd be aiming for, right? And to answer your first part of your question, yes, it will operate 7 days a week, and probably we're looking at, as we go up the second story of the Bowls Club, that whole wall facing the bowls green becomes a screen for a projector, like they project images onto the harbour and that sort of stuff, right? So the idea would be that, and with the slouch hat coming up at ceremonial times, is to have functions maybe on a Friday or a Saturday night that are based with come down and see the light show in the beautiful park with the trees, and see the brim go up, and we'll have a few soldiers there doing a bit of a march around, and then, by the way, come over to the club and have dinner before you go. So all of that is in our planning. But what we've found is that Club Gladstone, as a managed entity, as a proprietary limited company, will be the operator of that facility professionally. And the Transport Museum in Gatton, we had a similar situation where we always intended it to be run by an incorporated body. But when Steve Jones, the mayor, died, a couple of the people there sort of thought, oh, this is good, council will run a museum now. No, failed. And we're now taking it back into an incorporated body, which will become the Queensland Transport Museum Incorporated. That way we can get grant money. That way we can get money from industry. We can go and, like to Twiggy and places like that, where they won't particularly give it to a government or an entity that is not incorporated. So, yeah, look, it's a moving feast, and I think that we've tried to think of all of that. But when we started this, we said, this is to try to put some amenity back into the bottom end of Gladstone, as Chris said, right? We've got that green space that was started years ago. Okay, it's got a swimming pool in it, and it's got a showground that needs something done with it. So we see this project as the rebirth of the green space. Like, I'm going to be dead before it's built, for God's sake. Let's not worry about that. Oh, 10 years. Yeah, but Chris said it. You've got to start the project. We've got to start it, and we've started it. Yes, it'll get modified, perhaps, I don't know, but we do talk to a lot of people. But it's a starting point. It's something to talk to the likes of Twiggy and those blokes about.
Councillor Goodline.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Graham, Carly. It is exciting, and thank you for sharing the business case. I had two questions. I note in the material, I think it was 48 direct jobs ongoing. So does that mean that the operational requirements will be 48 FTEs? Is that how that?
So the jobs in there, it states that there's around 48 full-time employment positions that would be created, with a further 45 jobs that would be as a ongoing, so supply, and then an additional 28 out of that. The data is pulled from using REM plan economic data, which is then obviously their modelling and calculations based on the total project figure of around that $26 million, and then looking at the estimated of the tourism that we found in that first year. That's potentially the staff that would be required there. Some of that staff will obviously, when they do their modelling and data collection, it's based on an average of how many hours one might work over a course of 12 months. So some of that would obviously be used through casual staff, so as Graham's just mentioned, using the facility to potentially host some functions or create that, and it's across that board as well. So that's taking also into the current facilities that are already there, so hospitality staff, bar staff, etc., to run the whole, I suppose, Club Gladstone entity as well as their museum, etc.
And
Yeah, I don't see volunteers being used in any other capacity other than talking with people and talking them through the experience. Like at the Bowls Club at the moment, our business is down 68% because of this jolly thing that's going on with COVID. But we still employ 13 people, right? And you've got to have 13 people, even though we're only bringing in about 600,000 a year. So if we're stepping up to a project that's going to turn over 4 to 5 million, you've got to have cleaners, you've got to have staff, you've got to have, so 45 I would say is conservative. Okay. And we've tried to be as conservative as we can, realising that if this ever comes to fruition, we're going to have to overperform, under-promise and overperform.
And that so the 4 to 5 million revenue, is that predominantly through gate sales and then hiring of the facility, obviously corporate functions, that type of thing?
That sort of stuff.
Yeah,
a lot of corporate functions, and it's been designed that way. The whole top story of the new Bowls Club will become convention and dining facilities for that very reason. The downstairs area will become bar, bistro and daily activities.
So sorry Graham, may I just add, so some of the modelling that Club Gladstone has taken on is a very similar modelling to say the likes of Rocky Sports Club up in Rockhampton. So catering for all the sporting associations and club associations, community organisations that don't have that clubhouse. So I suppose when we're talking about corporate functions as well, we're talking about a lot of their end of year presentations, open nights, club nights, etc. that we'll be then hosting on behalf of those clubs. That will essentially, this will be their home. This is creating their home as well. So it's not about, we're definitely not creating or trying to draw some of the some of the events that already occur in Gladstone to this venue. This is about creating additional corporate functions and supporting the clubs that are under it. Now, at the moment, there's around 14 organisations that are falling under this organisation. And again, the modelling is to be able to go and create that and to grow that number there. And again, as I said, we've based a lot of that model off the likes of what Rocky Sports Club have done. Now they have around 55 members that sit under their organisation as their umbrella.
See, the interesting thing is that every year a number of sporting clubs come to the Bowls Club to have their presentation nights and their end-of-year functions, right? And some of them are associated with a well-known sports club here in town. And I say to them, well, why aren't you having your presentation there? Oh, they don't want us. They're too expensive. They want $45 for a meal and we only charge them $25, right? So they come to us now. So we're providing that service because there is a real risk of clubs like the Bowls Club becoming corporatised. And that's what we want to protect the Bowls Club from being corporatised by setting up our own entity at the top that will be controlled by its own board of directors. And the corporatisation of bowls clubs is actually happening. They're either getting taken over by this group or taken over by that group, and all of a sudden the sport becomes not important anymore. It's poker machines in and it's all that sort of stuff. We've taken poker machines out, and there will not be poker machines as long as Daddy's alive in that club, right? Because our business has actually improved with families since we got rid of the poker machines.
Thank you.
And we just got rid of Keno for the same reason.
Okay.
You're two drunks sit up at the bar and play Keno all day. Yeah, it's not good.
No worries. Councillor Muscat.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation and the documents. I hadn't seen this before. It wasn't included in our documents that we had. What was included was the Club Gladstone business case, the Slouch Hat History of a Nation, and you just discussed a number of operational models, P&Ls, a few more details in relation as to how you're going to get your revenue, the ways in which the facility is going to be used. So this would have been, I guess, 2 years ago when council agreed to give the club $75,000 to develop this business case. Can I ask you why isn't some of this information included in here?
I ask you why you thought it's necessary for it to be in there. Council provided $75,000. The Bowls Club provided $85,000 to complete the work that you've got, right? The profit and loss is a matter, according to me, for our board, right? That's why it wasn't included.
Okay. It wasn't, the ideas in here, my understanding was that if you, I guess, want to continue advocating for this project and you're going to approach a number of different people, you will need that information.
And we will provide that information to those people. Our contract with the council was, council provided $75,000 to contribute to what we've presented to you, not for a profit and loss on the Bowls Club, right?
Oh, no, not on the project. As in, I mean, I'm not talking, you spoke about a P&L. I didn't say I require a P&L or the council did. It's about understanding, you know, your streams of revenue, your operational models. It was in relation to the project, not about the golf club. No, the Bowls Club. So
Well,
that's not what I said. I mean, you mentioned a P&L about in relation to the project.
Well, we did that
so-
internally so that we could satisfy ourselves that this wasn't going to be a white elephant. And we have satisfied ourselves that if the project is as successful as we think it is and adds to the amenity of Gladstone, that the Bowls Club or Club Gladstone will then benefit, right? But an organisation like Club Gladstone, the way it's structured or will be structured, and the Bowls Club Incorporated, we're not for profit, and it will be not for profit, right? So whatever it makes will go back into improving the facility or will go back into the community.
Okay, any further questions, councillors? Just want to jump on one thing. I know Councillor Trevor was giving the LNG industry a very good rap before, and that's fantastic. They have invested significant funding into our community, but East Shores was actually funded by Wiggett's Island, so it's called the Gladstone Coal Exporters Maritime Precinct, but LNG certainly did. Councillor Trevor put a lot of money into our community. Have a look at Phillip Street, have a look at so many other projects, whether it's at Calliope, just recently opening up the new facilities out there. They've done a lot in terms of through the Gladstone Foundation. Took a while to get the money out, but we finally got it out. But certainly there probably was some LNG industry money in there as well. But I think when you go into East Shores, you see the big yellow sign, and we've got to acknowledge the the Wiggins Island for that one as well. But thank you, Graham. Thank you, Carly. That's a great
Thank you
presentation.
very much.
And
That is-
I'll move on with the rest of the
Thank
agenda. Thank you. Can I have a mover that the deputation be received? Thank you, Councillor Churchill. Seconded, Councillor Cameron. All in favour? That's carried. All right, councillors, officers, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is G 4.1, which is Streetscape Emergency Works, and I'll hand over to the General Manager of Finance, Governance and Risk, Mark Holmes. Thank you, Mark.
Morning, Mr Mayor, morning, councillors. This item is with respect to the engagement of a supplier to carry out performance of essentially supply of specialist precast bridge works and bridge decks for part of our capital renewal program and part of the, some funding programs. The need to enter into this contract, or to enter into a essentially an emergent situation, was the fact that we had gone to the market on a number of occasions for this construction as a whole, and we were essentially weren't receiving appropriate responses. So we've had to look in the current market to different ways in which we can deliver these products and deliver these projects. So Christie's team, with our works planning and scheduling team, have worked through and identified some opportunities in this space, and one of those options was to look at the separate supply of these precast decks. And just because of that, these decks themselves were essentially over the delegation that we've got for the CEO to enter into of 500,000. The contract was 900. We asked for that essentially emergent declaration by the CEO. So this is around endorsing that action.
Thank you, Mark. Before I go to questions, Councillor, I think I said streetscape. I meant streetscape. Yeah, streetscape. Street. What is it? Street. Not streetscape, which we have done on the way from the book. Oh, whatever it is. It's somebody, they're great. Do I have questions for the councillors, please? Stress street. Be stressing out with trying to pronounce that. Councillor Hanson.
Just going to ask a couple of questions. What's the lead time on the projects as a whole, and the funding lead time? You know, when we engage in a project, it should be shovel ready for. If we go for funding, it should be shovel ready. Is that correct? So, what is the lead time between when we identify the project and get the funding until we have to move the funding into fruition? Didn't say that really well, but.
I think that's totally dependent on the projects and the type of work. So some of those, and generally there's going to be some projects that are going to be more shovel ready than others. Essentially what we did find with this was just the current market conditions in play meant that we have had to renegotiate the funding guidelines with respect to it. There is, you know, essentially $1.4 million worth of funding attached to this project itself. So in order to make sure that we can deliver it and working with those funding partners, so keeping them engaged along the way, that's made sure that we've been able to both not only meet the guidelines for our funding, but also make sure that we can deliver the capital program. So yes, there has been a delay with this, and certainly the procurement has pushed that back. But generally what we work, making sure that we are working with those funding partners where we can't meet those initial deadlines, and they are going to be very much scheme dependent. Some of those funding grants, you know, they need completion of a project in 12 months. Some of them 24 months. So it really is dependent on the program.
No, the end result's fine by me. I'm just looking at the process as we move through.
Councillor Muscat.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I'm happy with this. Well, not happy with the situation, but I guess it's just a good example to highlight the challenges that we're having at the moment. So, and for anyone that is listening, it's probably not the last one that we're going to have. So there is serious challenges that we have to face in the next, well, at least a year or longer, much longer, and the impact is going to continue to be realised, you know, over the next few years. And this isn't just materials; this is obviously workforce, and this is something that will be. We need to really look into it and get some action from the higher powers to help us. But I'm happy to move this if
Thank
need
you.
be.
Yeah, thank you. I'll move in Councillor Muscat. I'll come back to questions. Just a seconder. A bid to second, Councillor Trevor second, and then I'll go to Councillor Cameron for a question.
Look, this may not amount to do anything, but we're being proactive. This is smart work. So this is just a supply only. This is a supply contract.
Yeah,
So and the same supplier is going to deliver and crane off this, right? Is that craned off onto the ground and they drive away, or is it craned off and put into the headstocks and they go away? You don't know. That's why I say it's a difficult one. My point is that if they just supply this to the side, get in the truck and go away, they're a supplier. The moment they crane it into position into the headstocks, they're a contractor. So in your letting of contracts and everything else, that could impact that. So it's just something to be mindful of. Just did have a little of experience with this some time ago with a very nice man from the tax office.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Cameron. Councillor Goodluck, did you have a question? Yep.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I don't have any information around quality and fit for purpose. I understand we've got information in the report there that Stresscrete is the earliest, is the contractor that can supply this material at the earliest possible time frame. Are we comfortable that this product will be of sufficient standard and quality to be fit for purpose for the job?
Thanks for the question. Yes, so our engineering team have been heavily engaged with the various providers of precast materials, and they've done their analysis and are more than comfortable to go with the Stresscrete product.
Thank you. And then, so it's a supply-only contract. Who then do we have to go out to contract to get someone to install? And what's our timelines on that? And what's the process we're going to enter into for that part, given that we've got deadlines with the funding that's tied to these projects?
Yes, there will be a tender for the construct only of the 4 bridges. That will be hitting the market in the next couple of weeks.
And we're confident that given that it will be a construct only tender, we should get more suitable options throughout that tender process.
That's certainly our aim. We won't know. We're going open market, so it will broaden our horizon a bit more than the D&C approach. So yes, we are hoping for a strong result to our construct-only tender.
And just lastly, in the event that hopefully we do get suitable tenders in, if that doesn't happen, is this something that our teams are capable of doing, or is it just not something that we have the skill set in-house?
There has been extensive internal discussions about mobilising an internal crew to do this, and it is outside of our capability at this point in time.
Thank you.
Councillor Hanson.
Mr Mayor, I do note the paragraph in there that councillors may wish to consider a review of the Chief Executive Office's delegations limit. I've got no desire to do that, but if the CEO wants to come back, but just because of the light of changed supply times and financial ramifications surrounding all of our contracts now, I think we should review it again. And is that the case here?
I think my unease with this is I've already made a decision and it's coming to you for retrospective resolution. So what happens if you decide not to support that? So balancing up that risk of locking in a supplier and delivering our program on time is a tension for me, but that's totally at council's discretion as to where you would like that delegation. It's an approved project within the budget. It's just this element is over my financial delegation.
Then probably there's a need to come back and review, if that's the case.
Happy to bring something back if councillors would like to look at that again.
Okay. Further question, Councillor Goodluck?
I have no desire to review the financial delegation, but I do think that these are the sorts of things that happens. This is an emergency situation, and as a council with the CEO and our executive team, I've got total confidence that we're able to deal with these matters given the processes that we've got in place, and I don't anticipate that this is going to be an issue to deal with today. I think it's been handled appropriately, and hopefully we'll be able to see these bridges constructed with minimal disruption moving forward.
Here.
Just a quick comment, Mayor Matt, if you don't mind. I think we need to put this in perspective because it's not only local government that's being affected. Our major industries, our small businesses are suffering from the same challenges out there as it stands at the moment. And they're bound, they're not bound by the restraints of the acts, and they have a fair amount of flexibility. But if we can create some flexibility to get what needs to be done, however we do that, I'm prepared to look at it.
Thank you.
Just a point of clarification,
Yes.
I didn't ask for a review. Councillor Goodluck, I didn't ask for a review of this situation today. I didn't want to handle it today, but in future, just for point of clarification.
Thank you. I have a mover and a seconder for the motion on the books. Further question, Councillor
My
Trevor?
position has always been very clear in relation to delegated power and responsibilities, and if we were debating that issue today, I'd be happy to recommend 1.5 and settle at a mil. But the issue is if the pipeline that's required to get the decision from there to today is lengthy and decisions need to be made timely in order to facilitate our budget being delivered in accordance with our decision-making process when we made those decisions, then I think we need to revisit the situation because we live in a completely different atmosphere these days when we have rising costs associated with steel, with fuel, with you name it, we've got it. And if there is a decision that needs to be made quickly rather than to be brought before the board table, I have every confidence that the decision that I would make would more probable than not be the same decision that the CEO would make. And for that reason, if there is some advantage to us financially or otherwise in increasing that delegation, let me go on record that I would totally support it, just as I've done in the past. These are uncertain times, and I'm just worried as a result of today's brief as to A, whether we're now going to be able to deliver our capital budget that we've already agreed on, and B, whether we're going to be able to deliver it at the costs that we anticipated when we originally delivered it. I think, I just have a fear there's a black hole coming, and whilst I don't want to spook people, what I do want to say is that I'm very much aware of what's going on out there, just as you foreshadowed, Glenn, and witnessed firsthand. There is some major supply chain problems out there that are impacting not only governments but small business and medium business, and rising costs of living. That's exactly right. So anything we can do to make the task easier and protect us from a cost blowout. If it's a timing issue, then I'm fully supportive of it, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Trevor. I'm not sure I want to hear from Councillor Goodluck if it's in a rebut, but anyway, over to you.
No, I'll go in a different direction. Thank you, Mr Mayor. I did have a question this morning, but I note that the emergency declaration was made under Section 235 of the Local Government Regulation 2012. What constitutes the CEO's ability to make an emergency declaration?
I'm happy to speak to that, but it's fairly broad and subjective, so, yeah.
Rhoda Tanya, maybe?
Yeah, just confirming that the commentary on that piece of legislation does confirm that it's up to council as a whole on a case-by-case basis to determine what is an emergency. If anyone wanted to challenge that, they would have to prove that it wasn't an emergency for council.
So, notwithstanding this particular agenda item, can you give context around the reasoning that this particular agenda was declared as an emergency item?
It was essentially about the ability to deliver the project within the timeframes. We mentioned we've had a number of extensions already, so were we not to make this decision, then it was highly likely the funding would be lost. So given the value of the funding, that's how it was considered to be an emergency decision.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions, councillors? No? Yes?
So if I may, Mr Mayor, just very quickly, with council's support, I'd like to have a look at how things go over the next, weeks and months in terms of procurement. I know there are some organisations who are changing their policies to deal with the environment they're in, and we obviously have to meet legislative responsibilities, and this is not something we could do, but I know of a private company where they normally have to have 3 quotes. They've changed their policy to say you need to ask for 3 quotes, and if you get 1, they're going with that. So I'm not saying that's what we would do, but I'm happy to, if council's supportive of that, to just have a look at how this impacts on us over the coming weeks and months, and if we think there's options that you might like to consider, we're happy to bring them back. But if not, and everything works, and these are just exceptions, then that would show the policy's appropriate.
Councillor Muscat?
Yeah, thank you. I think that's great, but I think we also need to look at it in a more of a, I guess, holistic way. Is that this isn't just about procurement, but it's about workforce, it's about planning, scheduling, and combining, well, obviously different ways of procurement processes, and there has to be some creativity here. So I think we need to look at a piece of work that is going to encompass a few more things than just how we get contracts. And I would like you to look at something like that instead. Both things, I know there's urgency to some things, but we can't not, I guess, prepare and be proactive for what's going to happen, and which is already happening anyway.
If I may, Mr Mayor, we are already doing that, and full credit to Christy and her team. There are numerous emails coming out with different strategies and ideas of ways to do things, and we're doing that within the bounds of our policy. If for some reason we're coming up against roadblocks that are making that difficult, that's when we remember. Please be assured, particularly Christy and her team, and many within the organisation are pivoting and finding new and creative ways to do things within our very strict legislative requirements that we have to meet.
Yeah, well, I'm fully supportive of that, and if there's anything that as councillors we can do in that respect, even if it's, well, I know you have powers to allocate different pieces of work and things like that, but if there's anything that we could do, please let us know.
Okay.
Maybe another word for creative with procurement.
Thank you. Yes. All right. I have a mover in Councillor Muscat, a second in Councillor Trevor. No further questions. Put the motion. All in favour. Motion's carried. Thank you, councillors. The next item on the agenda is 4.3, which is impact assessment methodology, and I'll hand over to the general.
4.2.
Oh, I already moved. I already done that one.
Yeah.
No, I've been watching Daryl on screen. It's fine. When he puts his hand up, I'll acknowledge. Thank you, Councillor Braithwaite. Oh, sorry. 4.2, perhaps. We'll go back. The Australian Institute of Company Directors, Specialised Supplier. Back to you, Mark. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This is just a fairly standard specialised supplier report just about the endorsement of the Australian Institute of Company Directors as a specialised supplier for its suite of training products. And it's around just getting the endorsement of that and putting them on our long-term supplier register.
Thank you. Pretty straightforward. Councillors, mover please. Councillor Churchill.
No, I'd be prepared to move the officer's recommendation. As a long-time member of this organisation, they will create good high-level strategic benefits for those that are prepared to undergo the intensive training and development, so totally support it.
Thank you. Seconder, please. Is that you, Councillor Braithwaite? Are you waving up there? You have a question?
Oh, sorry. Just trying to put my hand up at the moment. I just got a question. Sorry, I do second this as well. But my question is that this is a very expensive course now, and I'm really into personal development and getting and improving the skills and and the technical know-how and all our professionalism, the whole lot, and decision-making process. I just wonder, you know, whether we regulate or whether we actually put a certain amount of budget toward this, so this doesn't, all of a sudden you've got 10 people. How many thousands of dollars is this course? So I'm quite well aware of the expense of the course and the impacts it can have on training budgets and so forth.
Thanks, Councillor Braithwaite. I'll throw to the CEO for that one.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Braithwaite, you're quite right. The company directors course is a significant investment, but there's a whole suite of products that AICD provide, and our council has done, you know, the foundations course before, so there are various options, and yes, anything of that magnitude would be approved in a performance development plan and very tightly managed to make sure it was appropriate. Yeah.
Oh, so they just don't do directors courses?
No, they do a range of different training opportunities that, as we said, we've utilised in different forms before.
Yeah. I was just mighty query. So I looked at it, I'm thinking, man, this could get really out of hand. And although the whole concept of it is it's the peak governing body over this, and they're ideal. As Councillor Churchill said, they're just well worthwhile. It's money well invested in our team and our people. But I do second the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Braithwaite. I personally recommend all new councillors should do at least a basic version of this course, because very shortly after getting elected, there's a budget process to go through, and most, you know, it's a pretty daunting first time you go through that, and certainly this course would help new councillors that don't necessarily have that boardroom experience. Councillor Goodluck, do you have a question?
No, I was just going to reiterate that it's an important course, and you know, for councillors, we've undertaken it. I got a lot out of it personally, and particularly for, you know, CEO, executive. We've got $250 million or thereabouts a year of ratepayers' money that we're responsible for making sure we invest in the region, and any investment in making sure that our executive team and relevant people throughout the organisation have a thorough understanding of governance and process. That's only going to be a benefit to ratepayers in the long term. So I'm happy to support the motion. Thanks.
Thank you. No further comments, councillors. The motion is moved by Councillor Churchill, seconded by Councillor Braithwaite. All in favour? Motion is carried. Now we'll do 4.3. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Christy. 4.3 is pavement impact assessment methodology, and I'm handing over to the General Manager of Strategic Asset Performance, Mark Francis. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mayor. Morning, councillors. This paper is seeking you to, I'll just remind myself, repeal the pavement impact assessment methodology adopted by Council in 2010, and to delegate to the Chief Executive Officer authority to adopt and approve future amendments. The Local Government Act provides a basis for Council to advise an entity about the use of a road to lessen its impact, or to require that entity to carry out works to lessen the impact, or to pay an amount of compensation for that impact. The pavement impact assessment methodology is the maths and the methodology which allows us to calculate what that impact is in dollar value. The current amendments proposed have allowed us to make sure that we are calculating that in a much more accurate way, and ensure that the maintenance contribution calculation, however that's recovered, be it through rates equivalence or special charges or infrastructure charges, has been changed to be calculated using the best maintenance costs that we can. This was originally adopted in 2010 almost as a policy about how we would calculate that recovery cost. It essentially sits outside of our policy framework, where we have the head of power under the Local Government Act, and that's why we're asking you to repeal the previous changes, allow us to use this methodology and delegate to the Chief Executive any future amendments to ensure that we're recovering the best cost and making the most precise calculations that we can.
Thank you, Mark. Questions, councillors? Councillor O'Grady.
Thank you, Mark, for explaining. When I opened the attachment of this, I just about had a heart attack. And now I know why algebra was very important at school. My gosh, DEC equals whatever that is. So, yeah. Yes, I know. But when I opened it, I thought, oh my gosh, so I'm happy to move.
O'Grady, move. Councillor O'Grady, seconder. Councillor Cameron. Any further questions, councillors? No, I'll put them, yes?
So, what would be the, I guess, the process to follow to see whether it's kind of working or if it's, is there any reviews coming, or what would it?
One of the reasons for this change is for us to calculate the impact of the Clarks Creek wind farm on the road network. So this methodology is provided to the proponent to help with their calculations and for our internal work. So I'm happy that once that work's complete, we bring it back to you and you can see what that the quantum is of the impact and the opportunities for cost recovery. Yeah,
no, it would be great to see, because obviously we'll be using it for a number of different things too. Thank you.
Just a quick comment, or albeit question. Yeah, very impressive, and again, Councillor Muscat refers to it. Is it working? So it'll come back at some later stage. But how does this compare with other local governments in central Queensland? Is there a comparative? Do we compare apples with apples, or are we, you know, are we the lead to take this, or has it been done successfully or unsuccessfully in other local governments?
I'll defer just in a moment to Carmen Smith, who's our engineer that has worked on this and I understand has done a little bit of benchmarking there.
I'm not opposed. I'm not opposed. I think it's fantastic.
Absolutely, but she'll be able to talk more about what other places do as well. I think from the origin of this was that TMR used this type of tool and local governments didn't. So in 2010, the decision was made to have the similar methodology as TMR were using to calculate the impact on there. But Carmen, can I pass to you to give a bit of context?
Thanks, Mark. Good morning, councillors. Yeah, so this is using the TMR methodology mostly. There are some slight amendments because council doesn't actually have all the information that TMR uses. So we've made some assumptions and using the information that we actually have available. I have done some preliminary contact with some of the Central Queensland other councils and what they're using. I guess their scenario is slightly different because they talk about actual, especially with the mining industries, there's a large amount of increase in traffic numbers, not so much heavy vehicles that are just traversing through the network. So there is a difference in that, and basically just how vehicles in those other councils are using their networks. So with Gladstone, most of the time they're actually just traversing through. With our wind farms and that, there's not a lot of them at the moment that are proposing to be built within our council area. So, but generally the principles are very similar.
Thank you.
Councillor Goodlap.
Thanks, Mark. Happy to support this. If we look at estimations from the port with regards to wind towers, we're conservatively estimating we could see up to 2,500 wind towers come through the Gladstone port in the next 10 years, as you're well aware. And that's each wind tower is about 250 metres tall, broken down into 13 oversized, overmassed loads. And these are going to be traversing through the streets of Gladstone and along council roads. And this work is about making sure that as a local government, we can understand what the impact of that is to our road network and what the cost then to ratepayers is going to be, and how we can most equitably and fairly share the burden of that cost through both industry bodies, state government, local government, council, and I'm sure ratepayers absolutely want to make sure we're playing our part in promoting, you know, the economic strength of the Central Queensland and our own region. But there is a cost to these major infrastructure transports, and we need to make sure that at the end of the day, our ratepayers aren't just left to foot the whole cost. So happy to support this motion. I think you've got a mover and seconder, Mr Mayor. Happy to support it.
Yeah, Councillor O'Grady moved. Did I get a seconder? Sorry, Councillor Cameron, that's right. I did too. Is there further questions, councillors? No? Councillor Trevor.
Curious, Mayor, where the wind farm stuff being unloaded at the Gladstone port? Is it up at Fisherman's Landing or is it coming through?
Still being determined, I believe.
Okay, so there's been
Is that
no
correct?
decision in relation to that?
I would need to take that on notice.
Okay.
Probably a question for the port, but they've certainly got some issues to get through before they can finalise that, but they're working on
Yes,
it.
but
yeah.
I just think like if we're coming through here, Port Central, we're going to have a lot more impact on our roads than if it were to be at Fisherman's Landing, that's all.
Yeah.
Sorry? Okay.
Excellent. Thank you, Councillor Branthwaite. You're right there. No questions? Excellent. All right, move Councillor O'Grady, second, and Councillor Cameron. No further questions. I put the motion. All in favour. Motion's carried. The next item is G4.4. I have a conflict of interest, so I'll hand over to the Deputy Mayor and I'll leave the chambers.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Item G/4.4, sorry, tender for training services, and I'll hand over to the General Manager for Finance, Governance and Risk. Sorry, Mark, over to you.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. This item is around establishing a register of pre-qualified suppliers for delivery of training services across a number of areas within council, in which essentially support the development of our employees. There's essentially, when we've gone out to market for those, we've received 53 responses, and essentially after assessment we've determined that pretty much all those are suitable to be on that panel, and that listing is included in that resolution for your adoption.
Councillor Hanson?
I'm happy to move.
Happy to move. Second in Councillor Muscat. No further questions, councillors. All those in favour? Declare it carried. If we can invite the Mayor back in. Thank you, Rachel. Over to you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. The next item on the agenda is councillor reports, and I have a councillor report from Councillor Cameron.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, I'd like to report that on the 23rd of March I attended the official launch and the co-design of the Tropical North Queensland Drought Hub Fitzroy node. This is a federal government initiative and it's funded through the Future Drought Fund. James Cook University were the successful tenderer to facilitate this, and the Fitzroy node was the last of the 6 nodes to be established in the area, and they include the hub at James Cook University, of course, which is going to be the lead, the Gulf Savannah node, which is the Northern Gulf Resource Management Group, Gulf of Carpentaria node, which is the Southern Gulf Natural Resources Management Proprietary Limited, the Fitzroy node, which is the Fitzroy Basin area, which is the one I attended. There's Mackay with Sundays and the Burdekin node. Some very good information came out of this, which I'll see if I can plug quickly for you. The Fitzroy Basin area is an area which runs from Nebo to the north, south to Mondowan, out past Claremont to the west, and Gladstone being the most east, and out into some island areas out there as well. This is to do with establishing and gathering a whole heap of data and information across those nodes, collating them, and they will be analysed by the James Cook University for a management and facilitating ways and means of addressing the effects of drought. Some interesting stats that came from the Fitzroy region that we're in is, they say that in this area, which I just described, there are 3.2 million head of cattle. There are 77% of all active coal mines are in that particular area. There's 5,178 native species that thrive in the region, 8,534 wetlands. 79% of the land is managed by farmers and graziers, which was an interesting stat, and there's 224 rare or threatened species. I attended a brainstorming section with that, and at the end of the session it was asked for people that would be interested in staying on as a part of the working group with the Fitzroy node, and I gave my indication that I'd be interested in continuing on in that position. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. Further councillor reports? No? There's no further written reports? Okay. Councillors, there's no further council reports, there's no urgent business, and there's no notices of motion. We don't have any confidential items?
Councillor report, if I may, with your indulgence, as I move around our region, it is patently obvious to me that lots and lots of people are aware that there is a federal election coming up. From my perspective, today could be your last day as our mayor. I would just like to wish you and all candidates in the federal election the very, very best of luck. I think it is always a very brave move to put your hand up to serve the public in the public interest. And as I say, I'd like to congratulate you as my friend, and I would like to congratulate all candidates who are putting their name forward in the upcoming federal election, and wish them all of them, the very, very best when the election is called, a date is set, and a decision is made.
Thank you, Councillor Trevor. Well, in regards to that, I will be taking a leave of absence as the Mayor of Gladstone Regional Council from Monday, 18th of April, which is Easter Monday, which I believe is the last date the election can be called. No election has been called at this point in time. And the reason I've chosen that date is because, as per the tradition, the Mayor has responsibilities and duties, as do councillors, over the Easter period, and particularly around the Brisbane to Gladstone yacht race. So I'll fulfil my duties as the Mayor of Gladstone right up to and including Easter Sunday, where we will present the trophies to the winning yachts as they come into the harbour, and then on Easter Monday I'll take a leave of absence for the election period, which is possibly 33 days and possibly on the 14th of May or the 21st of May, but that decision's made by somebody else. But I'll just leave it with me for a minute, Councillor Trevor, and councillors, if you wouldn't mind. I'm not being overconfident or anything like that by any stretch of the imagination. I've never taken our community for granted, and I never will. Flynn is a very big electorate, and this could very well be my last council meeting, and 22 years I've spent representing our community here in Gladstone. And I'd just like to just mention a few things. We've seen the return of Gladstone Area Water Board dividends that were ripped from our community. We saved the Gladstone Port from being sold. We built the PCYC, we built a library, we bought an entertainment centre that they called a white elephant that never was. We built a new community centre in Agnes Water, we built skate parks and pump tracks. We built Bunting Park, which is an amazing facility for Calliope. Elf Larson Park, which has revitalised Miriam Vale. Lions Park in Gladstone, which is a fantastic facility for everybody who can use that. Of course, the Phillip Street Communities and Families Precinct is a project I'm so very proud of, because what that does for the social sector of our community is just unreal. We've seen the development of New Auckland Place, Eden Vale and Settlers, and the development of the Heritage Village, and I'm so proud to have supported that over many years as well in Talina. The construction of 3 LNG plants, Rio Tinto Stages 1 and 2, Wicket, as we mentioned earlier, Northern Oil, and now Alpha HPA and an emerging hydrogen industry. It has been an honour and a pleasure to work alongside each and every one of you, and if I am fortunate enough to be elected as a member for Flynn, I'll continue to deliver right across our community. Thank you, Councillor Trevor, for your funding for the Calliope Crossroads. We secured, as a group of mayors in central Queensland, funding for the Inland Rail project, and as a council we've also created so many exciting events. Thanks to Kylie and her team, we brought the first NRL game to Gladstone, and that's right, the Gold Coast Titans versus Manly Sea Eagles, and it was a fantastic game celebrating 100 years of rugby league. We didn't just bring rugby league, though. We brought the Reds and we brought the Raw, and we've created a lot of exciting events, whether it was from our Cultural Immersions Festival. We've adopted a rap. We've had the federal court's consent determination here in Gladstone, and of course we raised the Indigenous flags and the Torres Strait Islander flags at the front of the chambers when first elected. Luminous, that the list goes on. We have worked together well as a team, and I thank you very much. And if I am fortunate, as I said, to be elected the member of Flynn, this will be my last council meeting. If not, I'll be back here to continue our work across the Gladstone region as we have done, as I said, for the past 22 years. And with that, councillors, I declare the meeting closed at 10:25 a.m. Thank you.